Hello and welcome. My name is Kate Marand. I'm a program manager at the DC Department of Small and Local Business Development for our Innovation and Equitable Development Division. Today, we are excited to continue our Aspire and Dream elective series for 2024. And our speaker today is Sara Gibson from 20 Degrees. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Sara to take us through our topic.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be with you all here today. This is a topic that means a lot to me because no one walked me through some of these numbers. So, and if you don't know, sometimes, especially when it comes to finance or business setup, you can start this story in your head that it's something that you should have known, but that it just isn't how it is. And what we also know are there are great entrepreneurs in this town. I'm a Ward 1 resident and just really am proud to be part of the DC business community. I'm here with my colleague and friend, Crystal Lewis, who is also on our team. I'll be the main presenter today because Crystal's so new, but Crystal knows all about numbers, so she's going to make sure that I don't say anything incorrect. We're just really a team. So for those of you who might not know us, who are we? 20 Degrees is named after the ideal angle to skip a rock on water. And we all know there's some great rock skipping joints, places in this town. And rocks are supposed to sink. There's no reason that gravity can be outdone. But when the rock hits the water close to 20 degrees, that's the most important thing, then rocks actually jump. Our firm was started with a firm belief that just like rocks, there's a lot of us out there who were told that they were supposed to sink, that they weren't expected to succeed, and they weren't expected to jump into abundance. And what we know is just like rocks, if you have the right angle, the right approach, you're willing to stick at it for a little while, then you too can jump. And there's also usually a system and a method to it that can look like magic until you kind of figure out what it is. So we have a lot of background in financial management and planning and grant making. We're the money people. Sometimes I joke that we are referred to as the Ghostbusters. When people don't know who to call when it comes to money, they call us, and we specialize in nonprofits, early childhood organizations, and small businesses. So hence why we're here. I stole my next slide, but there you go. And we really work hard that people feel abundance. So my hope for this time together is at the end, you feel a little more confident and that you walk away, and to quote my colleague Crystal here, that you've got some Google fuel. So maybe you heard something new that you want to learn more about, but now you have some words to go find it. We know that no one can track down answers faster than entrepreneurs. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get through some basics. We're going to show you some hacks and then some terms that if you don't know them, you should, because other people know them about you, and we want to make sure we're closing that gap. So why even bother with this? Because it's getting harder to get money out there. Small business lending is tightening. For a while, there was actually pretty flush, and those days are gone. And also because of some failures of banks, everyone, the people making the decisions about either loans or investments or even revenue, places where they're buying, are under a lot more scrutiny. So when that happens, it makes harder, especially for small businesses, to make it. We always like to start a little rumors and gossip. Here's what we're hearing on the street. Traditional lenders, this means banks, this means the folks are pulling back. They're not stopping, but they are pulling back. CDFIs, who are some of our favorites in town, are increasing their diligence. So even the most friendly of places to get that couple $1,000 loan or even couple $100 loan are asking more because their loan committees. And they also don't have as many people. So it's just everything's taking longer. There is a bright spot, the State Small Business Credit Initiative. So we're pretty happy about what we're seeing there. That is dollars hitting the street, also with technical assistance. Disby's running that right now, so take a look over there. Kate, you can chime if I'm missing something there. I do think it is probably the last cheap capital we may see for a really long time. The Biden administration, I think, put $10 billion in it. So if you were in a high growth phase in your business, or even just getting to know what it takes can prepare you for later. And we're also seeing interest in specific areas. If you're in climate, which we know there's a lot of moves, solar panels, retrofitting buildings, things like that. There are other people who are interested in that as well from an investments perspective. And even procurement is also good with the government. I think DC actually does a pretty solid job. Tip the hat to our colleague Kate there, but it's hard, and they also are a big machine. So everything takes time. So in the meantime, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to learn the language of what decision makers who either want to buy from us or give us a loan or even make an investment, what are they looking at? So we can be ready when we get our shot. We don't always get a lot of shots, so let's make sure we show up real well. I want to make sure that cash management feels strong. Businesses don't usually fail because of revenue. They fail because of cash. And so watch, and they can get really confusing. You can look at a piece of paper that says you have money, but it doesn't always match your bank account. We're going to try and make that shorter. And finally, we're going to hope to grow your confidence. When you are in the game, you are in the game. And that means, there's rules that people aren't talking about. And so we're going to make sure we're talking plainly about those. And I hope that you'll ask any questions that you have. All right, so start here. Why do we have this start here section? Because we've worked with a lot of small and emerging DC businesses. We may very well know some of y'all on the screen. And this is the basic stuff that we see has gotten in the way most frequently of organizations either getting an opportunity with a procurement opportunity or anything. This is the stuff that no one told you. These are the systems you gotta have. A legal structure. You have to exist in the eyes of the law. We'll get to that. That means you have to have a tax ID number. You have to have, it's the equivalent of an address or a name with the IRS. You have to have a business license and a registration. I'll tell you, I had a previous business and it took me about a month to realize they were different things. I put childcare license here because there may be childcare providers. It's something we care a lot about. Also, if there's to point to, if you are in certain industries, you will need subject area specific licenses. You need a business bank account. Don't be putting those things together because that is a recipe for trouble that is too hard to unwind. If you can, a business credit card. That's another thing. It just keeps everything, keeps the business with the business and your personal with the personal. And insurance. You cannot play with some of the bigger dollars if you don't have proof of insurance. And by the way, these are all educational advice. None of this, talk to your lawyer and your accountant. This is friendly advice, but for everything, you should talk to a professional. Okay, so legal structure. What does that mean? So the two most common are sole proprietorship. That's basically like you're hanging out there with yourself. It tends to be more intermingled. It's simpler. An LLC, even a single member LLC, is a little more complicated. There's a few more forms, but it does limit your liability. Those are what we see most typically, and we can share these slides, and there's some links to what these things mean. It's really just a link to an IRS website, to be real honest. Some people are also an S corp. That's true if you're bigger. There's some tax savings there, but it is more complicated. So that's really, I wouldn't even start looking at that until you were probably a couple $1 million in. Tax ID number. You do not exist unless you have one of these. You just go to the IRS. It's sort of one of those things that's oddly simple and critically important. Write down the number, know the number, love the number. Business license and registration. You cannot operate in the district, even if you are however small the business, you must simply have a license from the government that says you exist. And you need those other things to get there first. A clean hands. This is also one of those things that can hang people up. In order to do business with the DC government, which is a great customer, right? And we want to keep our dollars local. You need to prove that you don't owe more than $100. You're submitted all the tax returns and are fully registered. This sometimes can be a little trickier than we think. Forms aren't always perfect. So if you're trying to put an RFP, respond to a proposal, don't leave this for the last minute. Give it at least a week or two. We recommend a business bank account. Why? Because it keeps everything, it's a seatbelt that you can do for your own business. Get an account just for your business. Start with a bank you do business with, because they're going to see them very similarly. They know you're the same person, even though they will hold them separately. You need that IRS number and you need those legal documents to open them. CDFIs are also a good place to check. My first bank account was with City First. Also, I think it's important that we bank our values. So I love some industrial bank, love LED. I think LEDC has banking. No, they do not. So just check around, but make sure that the bank is someone who's in your neighborhood or close by anyways. We bank with United Bank as well as City First. So pay yourself from this account. So that way you're just like, you're not really a staff member. It's a little different treatment there, but that way you know what money is coming to your household from your business. Now, the second part of business credit card, this was an early piece of advice that I was given that a mentor of mine held up his business credit card and said, this is how you keep it all easy. So first, you got to find the right card for your situation. And there's a range of them. Your credit score will matter here, but there are some secured cards if your credit score isn't quite where you want it to be yet. And there's also just a range of options. So check it out. When you do apply, it is a hard pull on your credit. So if you're going to go for more than a couple, just kind of space them out. This helps you keep track of your expenses. Your accountant loves this kind of stuff because they do all the stuff for you. And the key thing is only put business expenses on the business credit card. And in the beginning, until you're really getting a feel, I would say err on the side of being more cautious than not. If you are there truly for a business purpose, make a note of it on your calendar or however you keep track. But it really is, it helps us get in the right mindset and also keeps us safer when it comes to taxes. Here are some other things you should think about. Insurance. Talk to someone, here's a couple, but you do need them. Planning, there's other systems. We love Gmail and a G Suite because then it gives a more professional look. Here we have a childcare management system. Again, we do a lot of work with childcare, but also because there may be very specific systems to your business, if you're in construction or whatever the case may be. Payroll. You don't really need to start here if you don't have employees, but it's something to just be aware of. And accounting systems. QuickBooks has a very small package. I think there's one that's $5 a month. I made the mistake of getting a higher one. And you know what? There's a lot of great stuff on there on the internet. QuickBooks I don't find it super intuitive, but with a little work, I was able to work it out. And so that way I could professionalize not just my work, but how I was running my business. Budgeting. When you get those contracts in, set aside a third for taxes. And it is painful. I've done there. But it is really another fail point for small businesses is taxes. Once you get behind, it's really hard to get out. And, the best thing you can do is have something coming in, but save enough for the tax man because he will come. And then if you've accidentally saved too much, then you'll get a nice chunk. You will have been a savings account for yourself. While we're on the subject of taxes, tax preparation and record keeping. This is how, taxes can feel intimidating with good reason. The best way to keep yourself in good shape is to just document everything. Keep the receipts, put them in a folder, make a note what the expense was for. If it was a coffee, who did you meet with? If it was a supply, when did you buy it and for what purpose? It's a diligence process. And it took me a minute to remember that I had to really make a map of every dollar I was spending. But one, it helped me budget more, so I knew what my budget really was and how much my business really took to run. But also then when it came time for taxes, not only was I safe from underpaying, but allowed my tax preparer to find me savings in the tax code that are designed for small businesses. But without the documentation, they don't really exist. Marketing and enrollment. Know who your core customer is and why they value you. So that's just one of those, you may think it's obvious, but if you don't hear it back from a customer, one, ask them. And two, make sure you're really clear. You're better also off finding one core set of customer. Like for us, our core customers are nonprofits between about $500,000 in revenue and $5 million. Does that mean those are the only people we serve? Nope, not at all. But a lot of our programming is built for that. That is where we are the most successful. And then we use that as we branched into other customer sets. Okay, so now we're at the starting line. A lot of work, but here we are. Budgeting. So for many people, money, there's a whole lot to money. And it is complicated. It is not just as simple as writing stuff down. But until we feel as comfortable in our numbers as we do with the rest of our business, we'll never be the type of business we know we can be. So how do you start if this isn't something that's natural to you? Or maybe, my dad was a plumber who worked at a railroad. So he did not, this was not a typical practice in my home, that we didn't have a family business. So I didn't have that experience. So how do you start this? Well, you set aside a little time, just 30 minutes. It almost feel like allergy shots in the beginning, where you just kind of get used to it. Notice that you're still breathing and you did something. If you don't really know where to start, like your checkbook, put it, what money went out, money went in, and just keep track of it. Each month, then ask, was this a normal month? We've had a lot of abnormal months in the last handful of years, but there's some hope that maybe things are starting to be normalized. So hopefully the answer will be yes. Where did you spend more money than you thought you would? And where did you spend less? Did you make as much money as you thought? Why or why not? What we find is that people are slow to pay, or people have a bunch of projects in the hopper, but contracts take a minute to sign, and then the first check takes a minute to sign. And then what adjustments, how do you need to be different? You've given yourself the best roadmap forward. So what's the data? And then each month you get, more. So you get to make better decisions. Create a folder, so this is in a standardized place. I actually had an actual red file folder. I also then eventually evolved that into an electronic folder. Pay attention to cash. Again, we're using other childcare because we do back office for childcare. But what you'll see here, Carla, she started with $10,000 in her bank account, which ain't so bad, right? She got a $5,000 grant. Amazing, woot. But that won't arrive for another 45 days. All right, so she did get $5,000 in from the care she provided, and her overall expenses were $17,000. So she should be good, right? Well, actually not really. She had the 10, then she got the 5, but it isn't in yet. And then the expenses. So she's out 2. So if she didn't really pay attention to when cash was coming in and cash coming out, she would think she had money that she didn't. So just the moral of the story here is just watch not just when things are promised, but when they will actually show up. Okay. Moving on to accounting, tax, and finance basics. This is back to the disclaimer. This is just meant for information and education purposes. Definitely find people you trust here. And I'll point to my DSLBD colleagues here. They have office hours. I think it's Wednesday, right, Kate? Go hang out with them, and they know all the good people. So you need these services professionalized, and they're expensive. So use the great resources we have in this town. Okay, so what is accounting? So it's what is happening with your numbers and summarizing them and reporting what has happened. Accounting is what has happened. Taxes, those are the things we simply must pay. The government collects them, and frankly, they're used to put on programs like this. So, as my accountant told me, it's a good thing when you have to pay taxes because it means you're making money. Finance. Finance is a look forward. So that's when you use what you learned in accounting, factored in what you got to pay for taxes, and projected the story into the future through your numbers. So why does this matter? It helps you make better decisions. There's some luck to making a business work. There's a lot of hustle, but there's also some of this structure stuff that if you don't understand it, it'll eat you. It helps you figure out, are you making your margins? Do you have a profit margin goal? As a business owner, that's where you get paid out of that margin. So the more the margin, the more you get to take home. Compliance, you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. Funding and investments. As you grow, you may need other people's money to do so. So make sure that you have a clear understanding of your numbers. It is the first thing investors will look at. And tax efficiency. The tax code it is often unfair and it is very opaque. But the best way to make it work for you is to understand how, as a small business, you can benefit from it. And get good tax advice to help you maximize every single deduction. So it is part of your revenue model. All right. These can feel scary. So 3 critical financial statements. So in your QuickBooks, you should be able to run these. Can you do cash flow? You do cash flow, right, Crystal? Okay. All right. I was making that one up. If you have an account, your accountant can give you those too. All right. The first one is your income statement. Money in, money out over a set amount of time. So this is an example over 3 years. But if you think about it as you're revolving, it's kind of capturing your checking account. What's happening in and out. This is probably one of my favorite statements. This one in cash, but this one I like to just see what's happening from year to year. This is usually the first one I read. Cash flow. This is the timing. This is where Carla thought she had money, but she didn't. This is where you're making sure the dollars in can cover your expenses. So you need to pay attention to this one. This one often gets neglected. I don't know why, but it's the one that accountants don't usually give you right up. It doesn't get asked for as much, but in some ways it's the most critical for how you run your business. And then statement of financial position. Candidly, I think this one can feel a little tricky. It's like, what is happening here? This is the total value of your business minus the liability. So it's looking at if you have equipment, if you have outstanding invoices, this is looking at all of it. So in some ways, this is the one that is the least obvious, but the most important. Any investor or bank will pay a lot of attention to your balance sheet. And you also want to make sure your net assets are going up. Or if they go down, you should have a really good reason for it. And sometimes there is. So you have to look at all of these to understand what's happening. 1, how much is coming in and out? 2, does the cash match the expenses with timing? And 3, how much is your overall business worth? Crystal, anything to add?
No, I think you covered it. But, I think one thing that I'll point out is some small businesses, they either put off, using an accounting system to track their income, expenses, their banking activity, or just hiring a bookkeeper. And then they find that they, need these statements in order to transact business with a bank or get a grant. Make sure that you start right away using some kind of accounting system that will give you these statements so that when it's time to produce them, you can do that. It's a lot easier to just give what you have than it is to try and reverse engineer a year or more worth of transactions. So that's all I would add.
Amen to that. Yeah, definitely a day spent on YouTube around QuickBooks or some of their training videos at their $5 a month option is money well spent and time well spent. Tax. We're back to taxes again. I love to talk about taxes because I think it's the area that we don't talk about enough, how it is part of how business ownership makes sense. So first, hire the right professionals. They sort of never say, once you have some money, don't skimp on your accountant and your lawyer. They are expensive, and they are worth it. In the beginning, there's great free clinics. Again, great resources through DSLBD and through others. But and find that friend. Everyone's got a friend. Like, don't rely on them alone. And ideally, it's probably not a relative to start. But like, it's okay. I have leaned definitely on people until we, it was a long time ago, but until we could afford the accounting services that we really needed. Use those free resources, but don't think you can do it yourself. Make sure you're classified right. You have the right kind of business. Keep good records. Organize everything. Those of us who are organized experts, they have a leg up. And for those of us who aren't, you got to figure out how to make this work. It will sink your business if you don't know where your stuff is, and it's hard. So find a system that works for you as you actually are, not aspirational you. Make checklists for different due dates. Quarterly taxes, there's one coming up in about just under 2 weeks. So be ready for that and make sure you're putting business and personal in different places. Make sure you are maximizing your tax deductions. How you do that is through record keeping. The better your records, the more your accountant will help you find and deduct. Tax credits, again, more records, more possibilities. Time your income and expenses. Don't forget about retirement. It's a tax deductible expense, and you matter too. You may love your work, but you don't want to do it forever. So make sure you are thinking about retirement, even if you're putting in $25 to start. And make sure you're consulting folks for your own strategies. All right, we're going to do some, I think we can get here. So we're going to go into financial analysis. Here's why we're going to do this. It may seem complicated, but just hang with me. We are always committed to making sure that you know what other people are looking at when they see your business. So we are cracking the code a little bit here. This might be some of that Google fuel, but creditors carry. If you want a loan, which at some point you're going to need some other money to keep going, or not even to keep going, but to grow to that next level. Investors are going to care about this, and as your team grows and as you're building your business, financial analysis can also help you better understand where you have some opportunities. We're going to talk about financial ratios. So I was sharing with Krista earlier, when I was running other organizations, I didn't realize people were running ratios on me. So people are, if you go to a bank, be assured they're going to run these, and that will determine, it will be a big part of if you get the loan or at what terms. So that's what we're talking about here. It's going to be some series of calculations. They're quantitative tools that help others and yourself understand how healthy the business is. Consistency is key. That the data you're putting in and how regularly you're putting it in and how accurate it is matters. It helps you make better business decisions. My co-founder and I use our ratios pretty often, actually. And it can tell you how your business continues to improve over time. And also, if you hit a bump, let you know it might be just a bump, not the way things always are. I would take a screenshot of this, and then what I would do is go look at it on the Google. But here are some pretty significant indicators that people, this is what the banks see. They are seeing liquidity. How much can you cash? How many available assets do you have? Can you meet your short-term financial obligations? What's your net profit margin? Are you making money? How much? And there are also standards for different industries. You can probably do a Google search on that too. What is a typical profit margin? How efficient is your inventory system? Are you holding stuff longer? Are you just in time? Are you not in time? Are you, way past time? And also, just the last one is how in debt are you? If you've got loans and you haven't turned them that straw into gold yet, that will show up. So these are things that banks are running. So just take a look. Crystal, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in here and point out to the attendees, the top and bottom, so numbers 1 and 4 are on that balance sheet we were telling you about, or the statement of financial position. And numbers 2 and 3 are on the statement of activity or the income statement, aka profit and loss. So already we're seeing those financial statements that we were saying you need to be able to run. They become extremely relevant here. It's important for you to keep up with those reports and keep up with your own record keeping and bookkeeping so that you know this information before the banks do. The only way you'll know it is if you can run these reports. So that's it.
Thank you, Crystal. So if you kind of do one, this is where we might start. Current assets divided by current liabilities. So this is just one of those, just track it. This is going to tell you how you're doing, how profitable are you, and it's just a good, if you practice with one, this is the one to start with. Crystal, anything to add?
Nothing at all.
All right, so what does this look like? So here's a balance sheet we looked at. So the current assets are $32,514. That's that top under cash there. And the liabilities are $13,075. So what that means is they have 2.5 times the assets more than their liabilities. So if people are looking at this, what they know is like, yep, they got enough cash to cover what is due. They're in a good position. But this is what that looks like in action. I'll leave it up for another minute. So you see, we took the total assets, it's from the balance sheet, total liabilities, and divided it. But not all tools are perfect. So here's the upsides. All right, we'll miss you there. There's strengths and weaknesses. You can benchmark it. There's reports out there. Helps you make better decisions. And also it'll tell you early if things are going off the rails. But it's not perfect. It's only as good as your past data. Different industries are going to have different benchmarks. So make sure you're looking at your industry specifically. How and who does the accounting may shift it. And also, you just really need to be careful. A number doesn't tell you a whole story. It just tells you part of the story. So make sure you can use with words what the numbers mean. So why are we telling you all this? Because we've been there. We've just been like deep in it. And as we like to say in our family, we love to learn by doing around here. So we've been all over different elements of business. And so the information we brought you today really isn't just as an entrepreneur and as a growing small business owner, but also from different seats around. So yeah, we're really proud that we kind of made it through just like y'all have, and you will. We would say, you don't start a business because you want to, you start a business because you can't not. And that drive with knowledge is the key. All right, so another note on taxes, because again, no one loves to talk about taxes as much as us. If you get this right, you will save money and you will make money. I put the time and space there. This relates specifically to childhood, early childhood. Again, it's a core business of ours, but it also counts for other businesses. Be really clear in square feet how much of your home is dedicated to business. And I think you have to have a door on it too. So that's all for the same. But everything that you use for your business, the more exact you can be. Now for childcare, they have a whole different set of requirements there. But every business, if you have a home office, take a tape measure. How much is there? That all is important. Maximizing deductions is how you make a business more profitable. And be diligent about your record keeping will make you your accountant's favorite. Time tracking. Somewhere along the way, entrepreneurs started to think that our time was free. And that's actually not true. So how do we do this? One, it's a really interesting exercise. I would say that, especially when you're thinking about sales or that part of whatever the part of your business is that's hardest for you, worrying doesn't actually count as time on task. But you probably should do some. So we use the system called Clockify, and that's a free system. So we can track like how much time is going to different tasks. For me, as my role, I know that if I'm not spending 60% of my work on external relations, like something ain't going great. So I do track that. I tend to go into Clockify for me. I don't do it every day, but I pick periods of time where I will track my hours more exactly. So I've been at this for a little while. I kind of have a little better sense, but it's good. It's also great for as your employees, not because you want to check up on them, because no one needs that. But I think what it is helpful to see is, did you price the project correctly? Are you making the margins? It's good data in the future. All right, I'm going to go here a little bit because this is not actually the balance sheet and all the other financials, but I think this is also what syncs businesses. So this is a little bit of from one entrepreneur to another. I mean, it is a crazy thing that is dangerous often for our mental health to start a business. So making sure that you are treating yourself as not an inexhaustible resource, but as a critical part of your business success. So we just want to give a little nod to, stress is too much and burnout is not enough. So really keeping that in view of making sure you're managing your stress, and we start to feel burnout creeping in, that, what are you missing? What can you find more of? We always say start with connection. So what else can you do for burnout? Make sure that Clockify, if you are always on the clock, you're heading off a cliff, and you'll get there sooner or later, but don't do that. Your business and you matter more than that. Make sure you're grounding yourselves in gratitude, and for the things you are getting right, take time to learn. Thank you for being here. Surround yourself with positive examples. Boy, there's some great businesses in this town and some amazingly generous operators. I think what I love about being part of the district is that it really is. I've never been in a place where people wouldn't offer me insights or knowledge or first drafts of things. So as you show up, make time to connect, make time to be a part of this community. Stress, we love a little vagus nerve action, singing and humming. I don't know about the gargling. I can't do that, but a colleague thought that was a good suggestion. Find time for connection. Don't do hard things alone. And, do keep moving. I actually now put time on my calendar. In fact, I had a call earlier with Crystal while on a walk. We love box breathing. We'll do one of these. The Navy SEALs use this. But there's just, we are in our bodies. So I'm going to indulge myself here and say, let's do one of these. So when it goes to the top, maybe, and if anyone else has a favorite way that they are managing stress, would welcome that. So maybe drop it in the chat. But when we get to the top, why don't we do one round of box breathing? So inhale, hold, exhale. Yep. So the business is about numbers and profitability and products, but it's also about those of us who are brave or crazy enough, I don't know, to start a business, to making sure that we're still there for the next business or for each other. Also, don't do hard things alone. It's hard out there. So here's just some resources we like. And I'll tell you that Waitlist by Macroni, that it's a 10-hour song. It has helped me through some nights there. So our time here is ending. I'd love to hear, what did you hear? What surprised you? What energized you? What new questions do you have? Thank you for just doing the thing. I still, I was actually at a conference the other day with some folks who have been very successful in business. It was another part of the country, and it's a pretty intimidating room to walk into. But as I was telling a colleague, I said, why I belong here? Because I'm living the best days that they remember. The most successful entrepreneurs who've made way more money than I ever will. What I do know is that they long for the days that we are in right now, like when it's still new, when you're still figuring stuff out. And I have to remind myself of that. But I love being a business owner, and I love getting a chance to create and really be with people. And so just appreciate all of you. So I don't know how Kate, this is where, oh, Crystal, any last thoughts from you before we close out here?
I can't think of a thing. Thank you, Sarah. I think you covered all the things that I would have highlighted. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So takeaways, know your numbers, know your couple key sheets, your balance sheet, your cash flow, your profit and loss, your income statement. Take time to budget. Figure out how to make the tax code work for you. Document, 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 and treat yourself like the amazing part of business you are, and take care of you too. So that's my final closeout here. Here for questions or just cheering for you from here.
Sarah, thank you so much. And as I dropped in the chat, I've made most everyone a panelist so that they can come off of mute. Caitlin, I'm having troubles making you a panelist, but if you drop a note in the chat or raise your hand, I can also for any questions or feedback or discussion from folks.
We also welcome anything, how helpful this was. Consider it a pay it forward for the rest of the community. We do kind of talks like this on the regular, so we want to make sure if something didn't make sense or you had other questions that we get it right for the next group. Crystal, I think we've wowed them. Must have been all that talk about tax.
That's right. It usually thank you, Balin. Yeah, it usually wows people into silence, those taxes do.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question, Sarah and Crystal, which is I know we talk with folks a lot about working on the budgeting and looking at that. One of the things that we have seen and started to try to research and talk about is financial trauma. And what it means for folks to work through this while they may or may not be facing financial trauma, or just being in a space where they're feeling like they're not getting it right. So then it's easier to not do it, and just sort of, any perspective that you have about sort of taking the small steps into this, if folks need to kind of do it one bite at a time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the nut of our work. We've been called part therapists and part accountants. Ironically, we're neither. Because money is loaded. So one, give yourself the grace. And this is where the system is not what it needs to be yet. So one, set aside a small amount of time. That's why we recommend 30 minutes of budgeting a month to start with. And after 30 minutes, put it down. And the good news about it, it'll always be there the next month. Two, don't do hard things alone. It is really, yes, you're not crazy. It is, the deck is stacked against you, right? But how do we get out of that? We find others to be alongside us. So that's where, again, that hours with DSLBD, I'm an entrepreneur out there, give me a ring. There are those of us out there who don't, this is knowable stuff. You've already done the hard stuff, and that's living. So what we are here, this is knowledge that can be learned on YouTube. Spend a couple hours going down to YouTube, Accounting 101. What should I know as a business owner about my numbers? It is not your fault that you don't know this knowledge. But what I do know about every single entrepreneur I have met in DC is once we know what we're onto, we can just learn it. So assume you can learn it, but don't think you were taught it.
Yeah, and if I could add to Sarah, I'm going to just toss in one of my favorite quotes. There's an old wisdom quote, and it is, "We make the road by walking," meaning, the path isn't there until you start walking on it. And so, it's sometimes we'll meet up with entrepreneurs who seem to know everything, and they look really shiny and fancy. But we didn't know them when they didn't know a single thing, when they also felt like they were making all the mistakes and failing, when they felt like they were spinning their wheels or wasting time learning something and relearning something. Start where you are. don't be afraid to not know, and don't be deterred by those rough patches where it seems like you're always in a learning phase, or you're always in a phase of, digging out of some hole or whatever. That is just not, that's not going to be reality forever. It's just what it means to be new at something. So, so yeah, so if you're just getting started and you feel like you're always doing the wrong thing, or there's always some uh giant thing that you didn't know about and it seemed like everybody else knew, there was a time they didn't know it either. um and it more of us, so we would all benefit if more of us would just admit that up front. And the time to be the teacher is later, and the time to be the learner is now, and neither role is greater than the other. So
Mm. Once I was on the 42 bus heading to a meeting that I knew we were going to talk about REITs, real estate investment trusts. And I remember very specifically typing into YouTube, what is a REIT? En route to the meeting. So, I mean, again, to Crystal's point, the time to learn is also really cool.
Well, I want to say, Sarah and Crystal, thank you for spending some time with us today, for sharing this information, and also the various messages as folks are building up at different stages in their business. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up, and I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank y'all. Good luck out there. Say hi if you see me in a thing.